Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about something very important. That is the ongoing border issue between the Chinese and the Indians. As we all know, that some time back there was this issue again regarding the area in Ladakh that is called Galwan Valley. There was this skirmish that took place in which, according to the Indian media, 20 Indian soldiers were killed. Now remember, this is the area where the soldiers or the border patrolling forces, they do not carry any weapons. No live bullets, by the way. So that was a physical fight between the soldiers from the two sides, in which there was an unclaimed number by the Chinese, but again 20 soldiers were reportedly killed in that fight. After that, this entire issue escalated, and according to the Indians, the Chinese had occupied a couple of their areas. According to some, around 60 square kilometers in certain areas, and so on and so forth. Now, the current standoff could lead to a very serious situation, and that could lead to a full-fledged war. According to certain reports, 3 days ago, there was another fight, and according to Indian media, again, I'm reporting from their perspective, that they've been able to get back one of the mountain or the heights in that region, and eventually resulting in another fight in which the Indians claim that they have been able to kill a lot of Chinese soldiers, and the Chinese, they had withdrawn from that part. Now, this is something which is not going to be acceptable by the Chinese authorities. They will go back and they'll reclaim their position. Now, during this entire episode, if you look at the stance of the Americans, that's very pro-India, and they believe that the Chinese provoked them. They believe that the Chinese are the major spoilers regarding peace in that region. Now, this is what the American claim is. Well, the Chinese, they have said that India breached bilateral agreements. That's what they said. They also said that India damaged tranquility in the border areas. They also said that India violating China's territorial sovereignty. This is the claim of the Chinese. To talk further about this, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio, on my right, is Dr. Amina Mahmood Saiba. She is a foreign affairs expert. Thank you very much, ma'am, for taking out your time and being here. And we will be talking to Lieutenant General Raza Muhammad Khan Saab, who's a senior analyst on Skype. General Saab, thank you very much for taking out your time and being a part of our show, sir. And we'll be also talking to Jamil Ahmed Khan Saab, former ambassador, senior diplomat, over the Skype as well. Ambassador Saab, it's a pleasure to have you as well, sir. Thank you very much for your time. But let me put the first question to you, Dr. Amina Mahmood. The current standoff between the Chinese and the Indians, we should not take it lightly, because when you talk about the peace in South Asia, whether you talk about the Afghan peace that is directly affecting Pakistan, you talk about the current standoff that is also going to affect the entire area, not only a certain number of countries. Now, the Chinese dominance in the region, whether you talk about Nepal, because they've been betrayed by the Indians, so the Chinese, they looked after them, Thailand, or for that matter, certain other countries, including Pakistan, Sri Lanka, because all these smaller countries, they have been bullied by the Indians all the time. This is what the history tells us. But this is the first time that actually after 1962, and that there is a standoff between the two huge armies in the world, Indians and the Chinese. Madam, where are they heading? Where will it lead?
Obviously, you rightly pointed out that two major armies, rather one superpower going to be a superpower army, and the other the largest army of South Asia, they are 1-to-1, and they are under the threat of having a war that can be the Third World War even, because India is backed by the United States, and Russia and China are right now in alliance, though it is not a military alliance, but it may be a political alliance, an economic alliance, and they are basically working for a regional alliance in the form of SCO, and that is also emerging as a transcontinental organization. So, I think that this is having all the potential to be escalated if anybody from both sides do some miscalculations.
Ma'am, is it true that the Americans are actually pushing the Indians, and they have also maybe guaranteed them for some sort of a support to go against China? Because if you look at the current, I will actually say this is a cold war between the Americans and the Chinese. It's no more a trade war. Trade war may be is just a portion of the entire episode. Now, ma'am, in certain circumstances where the Americans are supporting the Indians, and when you look at the allies of the Americans, whether Taiwan or Japan, or you talk about South Korea, or you talk about Vietnam for that matter, or you talk about Philippines, the South China Sea issue also. So they have gathered the support of all these allies against the Chinese. And now they're also supporting the Indians to go for a direct conflict with the Chinese. Do you think the Americans will support the Indians at some stage?
Faisal, politics is not that much simple, you know. South side China Sea is totally a different affair, and there US is having support of all the 6 countries of that South China. But at the same time, they are obliged by Chinese as well, you know. They are having loans from China, they are having direct contact with, and they have large Chinese population also working over there, living over there.
That's correct.
And they are actually their local citizens, you know. They are, if they are living there, they are Filipino, they are Korean, but they are Chinese origin, and they are having all the sympathy towards China. So it is not easy to take any action against China in South China Sea. But the politics in South Asia is totally different, because from the very beginning, if you study the start of Cold War, it was the United States who wanted to give that role which Pakistan later acquired as the most allied ally of United States in the Cold War designs. They wanted to give this role to India. India denied that time. They chose to be non-aligned, and in that non-alignment they took all the benefits from Russia and US both. And they continued with non-alignment, which was actually non-alignment. So this time they got this opportunity. They develop in 21st century best in close relations, especially the strategic relation with India. They are having joint exercises in Pacific and Indian Ocean as well. And those exercises are giving Indian armies the confidence that they can have skirmishes, or at least, you know, direct clash with China. But you know, Chinese military modernization has gone to the level now, though it is primitive in contrast to the US Army, but in relation to
they're next to the Americans, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And Indian Army is having no match absolutely with Chinese Army, and that you have seen that India could not fire a bullet even, because they knew that what would be the repercussions. So I think.
But now there is another story, ma'am, that the Indians, they claim, the Indians, according to Indian media, they claim that they have been able to take one mountain or a hilltop, and the Chinese forces, they had to withdraw. Now let's see what exactly is happening.
But coming to your question, that you question that whether US would come to their support or not. Obviously, US will not physically support. They would support in strategic, in equipment terms,
intelligence sharing,
sharing, and in equipment, you know, best arsenal they would share with India. Maybe they can share their some of advisors and so. But they would continue to fight proxies as they were doing during the Cold War, and obviously they would not take.
So Russia was the enemy in the 70s, and now it's
Actually, Americans are not coming out of Cold War psyche. They wanted to, they know that their only supremacy is strategic and military dominance. So they wanted to continue, and they found their ally in the form of Prime Minister Modi, and he is taking under his rhetoric of extremism. He wanted to get the role of the hegemon of this.
All right. Let me take the same debate to General Raza now. General Saab, first of all, sir, tell me about the importance of that area, why the Chinese really want to get hold of that particular place, and why are Indians so desperate to get it back. Now, the point is that a lot of people believe that Pakistan will eventually, if this escalates from this particular point, maybe there are some chances that the Pakistani forces would join in if the Indians go for some sort of a misadventure in the Kashmir side, sir. Your take, General Saab.
Okay, Bismillah Rahman Rahim. I think I'll first briefly answer questions, and then I'd like to elaborate more on the reasons of tensions between China. First, the importance of the area where the tension is going on. is very clear, and that is that South Tibet, which is Taichin, is lately been claimed by India after 5th August 2019, and this was announced by Amit Shah on the floor of the Indian Assembly. And the Chinese very quickly told them that this is totally unacceptable to them. They also very clearly told them that Ladakh is not part of India, and Ladakh is part of Kashmir. Very recently, when our Prime Minister was there, when our Foreign Minister was there, the Chinese repeated the same stance that issue of Kashmir, which includes Ladakh, the disputed issue, which is supposed to be decided by the United Nations Security Council resolutions and a number of bilateral agreements between China and India and Pakistan and India. And that is the main reason. There are also a number of other reasons, and I'll come to them later on. As far as Pakistan is concerned, I think these are mere speculations. This escalation is right now, at the moment, directly. It is a bilateral issue between China and India, and at least China, I think, is determined to resolve it very peacefully. And I think the Foreign Office and the government has said so that China is being provoked, and there are a number of reasons for that, and I'd like to go to them now. There are these external reasons, and the most important external reason now is that India is now a formal US ally. There is no doubt about that. And particularly in view of India signing, the EMOA, which is, the Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement with the US, which allows the United States to use its military infrastructure at any time that they want. Also, keep in mind the US South Asia strategy, which is aimed at containing China and controlling Pakistan. India is now also a part of the US Indo-Pacific strategy. And I think India is clearly being used as a proxy by the United States, both
Jalsab,
against China as well as
Jalsab,
against Pakistan.
Jalsab,
And
it is
because of
believed, Jalsab, it is believed normally that Americans, they always verbally try to support you, but whenever there is a real problem, they normally don't do that. In case of Pakistan, 1965 or 71 war, and when Pakistan was I think Pakistan was a blue-eyed boy, let me put it this way, when Ayub Khan was the president, and we all know the kind of relationship we had with the Americans, but nothing happened. And similarly, on so many other accounts, do you think, sir, India in this region can afford to rely on the Americans uh, for taking some sort of an aggressive approach towards the Chinese, sir?
I think the United States is already providing diplomatic and political support to India very clearly in the open, and there are statements to that account. It is also, I think, providing intelligence to India from its satellites and other resources on the movement of Chinese troops and Chinese forces. And the response from India and the United States to Chinese actions, seems to be very coordinated, and that is mainly in the economic domain, in the political domain, and less in the military domain. But I think India should not expect any military or any other assistance than the one that I just mentioned to you because of a number of reasons. And one reason is that the United States is still, I think, stuck in Afghanistan. It is not out of that. The US as well as the Indian economies, they have been badly damaged by the COVID-19, more so in India, where there was a report only last month, I think last week, that the Indian economy, the GDP has suffered more than 19%. And I
Yes.
think so is the case in the United States. So they're not really in a position to start a military confrontation, neither India nor the United States. China is in a much better position, and I think this is known both to the United States as well as China. So, in my view, I think India will not venture to escalate this. But there is another very valid reason, and that is the elections, the state assembly elections, which are
Correct.
coming in Bihar next month. And I think the report of the one of the Indian intelligence agencies, which went back to the reasons of the Balakot attack, I think
Yeah.
that as well as this escalation is also directly related with that. It will provide some face saving to Modi from the humiliation, which the Indian army and India faced, as a result of the escalation in Galwan in June. So I think
Yes.
there is a host of reasons why India is trying to do that. Don't forget, that you made a mention of the Indian occupying some hill and imposing casualties on the Chinese. But don't forget, that they are used to lying. The media is supposed to lying as they did, in February, after they carried out the aggression against Pakistan. So I would tend not to believe what is being said by the Indian media.
All right. Now, moving on to you, Ambassador Saab, there is another school of thought, and that says that the Americans actually want that India should get into a conflict with the Chinese. So, if there is a certain number of Indian deaths, the Americans could capitalize on those dead bodies and try to put more sanctions on China with the help of its allies, because they would say that the Chinese were the aggressors in this case. Your take, sir?
That's right, and then many more factors than what you have just illustrated. In fact, it are very simple things. Now, Chinese Communist Party newspaper Global Time has, in a very plain terms and clear term, has mentioned that India should not be remain in any illusion that they could advance towards Chinese side, because the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, is quite well prepared to inflict more losses than it had inflicted in 1962. And we all know in 1962, India suffered hugely as compared to China. So they have said it in this plain words, and they have also, the Chinese have already said through their official newspaper that India, if they are doing it under the illusion and support of the Washington, then we will definitely take care of that. So words to that effect. So that factor is already there. But what other things are happening? As you said that the United States would definitely like to uh, test the muscles of China by pitching India with China. And India also has its very long outstanding border disputes with China. So Indian by itself, they would like a support from United States, although there are think tanks who are pointing fingers towards India, that India is being pressurized by United States to really act as a proxy and to show some resistance to Chinese. That's true. But there are other factors also which is building up. The world is no more is going to be a unipolar world. It's already started showing that it's diluted as a the United States as a unipolar world, as a member of the as a powerful country of the world. So China, in combination with the Russia, is definitely is a force to be reckoned with, and the SCO meeting, which is going to take place of the foreign ministers on the 10th of September, and prior to that, the defense ministers meeting of these three countries, Russia, China, and Pakistan, defense ministers and the foreign ministers, they are going to talk all these factors which are going on. And I will also point it out that the President Xi visit, forthcoming visit to Pakistan, they already have said that he'll be, besides other agenda points, the security and peace of the region would be one of the major agenda items. And And at the same time, once the $400 billion agreement is signed with India at that time also, one of the major factor was the security and the intelligence sharing with China, with Iran, and on the other side, UAE-Israel the agreement security factor is one major point there, and you have seen that the security advisor of Israel has recently visited UAE. So I'm
Yeah.
just giving these pointers and indicators. So that means there is some positions are being taken and firmed up from either side, and we cannot really disregard totally the South China Sea. South China Sea is one of those one of those irritants which Americans are posing through their presence there. And then, of course, China is taking countermeasure of it. And that's why the string of pearl and the string of alliance. So all these factors, if we see, then I will quote a statement of the United States permanent representative in NATO, the ambassador there, United States ambassador, who says that Russia, China, and Russia, they are weaponizing themselves in the space as well, and they are doing
Now,
so
Ambassador Saab,
because
a quick comment. Ambassador Saab, before I take the break, I just need a quick comment on this very important factor, and that is about the role of the US allies like Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Vietnam, Philippines for that matter. Now, the point is that, sir, these countries are with the United States of America currently. They are supporting them and all. Sir, what if there is a conflict currently going on between Chinese and the Indians, and eventually it escalates, gets into a, let's say, limited scale war or something? Sir, what sort of a role would these countries be doing in the South Asian Sea? Because primarily, when you look at it from that perspective, sees that there will be more pressure by these countries, along with the United States of America, on the Chinese in the South China Sea. Do you think Chinese can handle these two at the same time?
No, Chinese has really developed their marine a lot, the sea power a lot there. So yes, but they have not really come at par with the United States, according to the apple-to-apple comparison and orange comparison. But Chinese have gained a very good strength capability of the sea as well as air. That's one aspect. But this 440 nautical miles corridor of South China Sea, and the narrowest part of that is 4.7 or 4.8 miles of that bottleneck. So this is a very huge return for all these countries who are allies of the United States. And then in case of any skirmishes or any escalation of skirmishes turning into a battle of war, in that case, the allies would have hardly any option but to side with their with the countries of which they are allies of. So the positioning has already taken place, the posturing has already taken place. So South China Sea, why is it so important? Because this is the most crucial sea route for the Chinese and for some of the other countries, of course, but more importantly, Chinese. Chinese, it's like putting the knee on the neck of the Chinese through the South China Sea. See, unless the CPAC and the Gwadar is fully operational in terms of the carriage of all the oil and the goods and services from here. So from that angle, yes, the allies would have very little option but to, even if they don't like for some interest, they would have to really support their allied countries. Yes.
All right, sir. All right. Now, ma'am, another very important area, and that is about now we do understand the Indian hegemonic design in the Indian Ocean, the Blue Water Navy they talk about, then they talk about the US talks about the Indo-Pacific deal and all. So the role of the United States of America can only be seen if they are in absolute great terms with the Indians, and that is something they are really looking up to. Now, ma'am, in the current scenario, number one, first of all, tell me when during the SCO summit, whenever they'll be meeting, do you think this particular issue is going to be the major area of discussion? Number one, this tension between the Indians and the Chinese. And secondly, ma'am, what if Pakistan allows the Chinese in the Gwadar port to sort of establish a little naval base? I'm just giving an example so that they can look after the affairs out there and look after the CPEC also, because CPEC is under threat for sure. Whether you start from the top all the way till Gwadar and throughout the area, because that is the primary target of the Indians, and I'm sure of the Americans as well. Your take, ma'am.
Yeah. Just before answering your question, I would add to what Ambassador said. You know, China is a nation, they are very conscious about their prestige and honor, and they are very conscious about their area of influence, and South China Sea is a matter of their honor. Because as you know, in 18th century, 19th century Monroe Doctrine, it means that the whole Americas are their area of influence, their courtyard. They declared and they were stuck to that. Same is the case with South China Sea. One. The other, that China has changed the order of its enemies. First it was Japan, now it is United States, and United States is a distance power in South China Sea, whether for any practical purposes, where all those countries which are there, they are either dependent on China or they are under the threat of China, both in terms of economy and strategy. So, I think that it would be not very easy for United States to have support from South China Sea, any of the 6 countries, what I perceive. Secondly,
will not get any support.
Yeah, not at the time of military clash. They would not having any support. They would not having, you know, they are having.
The South Koreans, I mean, they are
except
doing a
from
brilliant
South
job.
Korea
I mean,
and
facilities of
Filipino
F-16s
as well.
You talk about, or you talk
Yeah.
about making their own jets. So the cases with
But
Japan
I don't think
and
that,
Taiwan for that matter.
I don't think that they would enter into a real war, or they would fight for the proxy for Americans. That is actually the actual situation. That's why the conflict is prolonging for such a long period. Otherwise, it might have settled much before if they would have.
Now, primarily, when you talk about the South China Sea, there are 3 major factors. One is the economic value of that area, whether in the form of oil reserves or fisheries and their rights, or because 20% of the fisheries is actually global. That is caught from that area, 20%.
Exactly,
That's huge,
exactly.
and the consumption we all know. And number 3 is about those islands, and then the distance, according to them. You know, these are their areas. Now that is something of prime concern, because because when you define an island, one is that which comes up and then it's again underwater according to the tide. The other one is about the rocks. But the real island means that there should be some activity, economic activity taking place, and there should be people living on that. Now, people are living there, economic activity is taking place because it's a base now for the Chinese. How do you see that aspect, ma'am?
That is actually the matter of survival of those nations. 6 nations are living there. They are having their own interest as well. You know, Vietnam, they are banking on the export of this fish. You know, every fish everywhere is actually Vietnamese fish. So, I do not think that they would sacrifice their economic interest at the altar of US designs. That is what I mean.
So, they do not want any sort of a problem in the region, in the South China Sea.
Yeah, exactly. And at the same time, they do not want Chinese hegemony to be accepted forever. They want to have their independent life, they want to have their own progress, development, economy, and they are resisting since the Cold War. You know, in 1940, what was the Korean War? Korean War was actually an internal war that was hijacked by the US. They wanted to interfere in, they wanted to block communists. That is why they intervened. Otherwise, it was a local war. It might have been settled inside. Korean War was purely their matter, but they took this opportunity to control a major country of the region, that is Korea. They have conquered physically Japan, and they actually captured that because they wanted to have their permanent presence. But you know, if we see the politics of 21st century, no country is ready to fight as a proxy of the US or any of the superpowers.
Whosoever has fought, later on they have all been in problems.
Okay,
absolutely.
And we are talking about SCO. You see
SCO
that
summit, yes.
SCO summit, and before that, India has refused to participate in Astrakhan exercises,
military exercises,
and I wonder if at the neck of time, Indian foreign defense minister may refuse to join that, because Chinese foreign minister would be there, Pakistani foreign minister would be there, and SCO has all the potential to discuss the bilateral conflict as well. And as Ambassador referred,
where do you rate SCO, ma'am? Is it a very strong group of countries? Because when you look at there are certain member states, certain
Observer
states are
states.
like the observer states like Iran, Afghanistan for that matter.
Yes,
the
Israel.
Central Asian states, Russia, China, India. Like 4 nuclear states you're talking about, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah. And even in this conflict, we are talking about that it is a bilateral conflict, and General Saab referred it's a border conflict. But you know, Pakistan is a party as well, because Ladakh is just adjacent to Gilgit-Baltistan.
That's what I'm saying.
And
that if
is
something happens there, what would be the role of Pakistan? That's why I put this question. Ma'am, if you allow me, I'll just come back to you on
Okay.
that. General Saab, now another very important area, and that is about the role of the Russians. I mean, when you talk about SCO, again, as earlier mentioned, that there are 4 nuclear states in that group. And they're almost, when you talk about a regional bloc, it's huge. I think one of the biggest in terms of population, in terms of power, in terms of economy also. Now, sir, the role of the Russians, because I haven't heard much from Vladimir Putin or Saryov, the foreign minister of Russia for that matter. Where is it leading? Because when we look at the issue of Belarus elections, again, the Americans' influence and the Russian conflict. You talk about Ukraine, American influence, the current government and the Russians. I mean, they're also engaging the Russians on certain platforms as well. I'm talking about the Americans, Chinese on certain, Pakistan, so and so forth. I mean, where is it leading and the role of the Russians? So your take, General Saab.
I think the Russian foreign minister has warned India formally of its policies, to become a strategic ally of the United States. This is on record, and I think they're concerned about what India is doing. I think it is going to affect India and Russia relationship. Also, I'd like to add that because of the present policies of India, I think BRICS is really, I mean, everybody's saying that BRICS is broken. SARC is already stymied by India. SCO again, I think it will be more or less dysfunctional. India would like to make it dysfunctional. I know China and Russia both would want that it should succeed. So these are these are the ramifications, of the change in the Indian policies and of that right now the economic war and the Cold War between India and China and the economic war between the US and China, I think that is also equally important. And if you recall, initially when the COVID-19 happened, India announced that they have earmarked a very large area of the size of Luxembourg to poach the many, hundreds of multinational companies who were doing business in China, and they wanted to attract them to India. And that is exactly what President Trump was also desired of. And there were many statements issued, some official statement by the US Health Secretary, where they said that COVID-19 is going to spread in China, and because of that, the multinational companies they would leave China and they would come back to the US or to Europe. So that has not happened. Also, when you talked of the impact of whatever is happening in the South China Sea, let me tell you that because of the BRI initiative, which now has 138 countries, I think China has achieved a great advantage because of all that. While it will not allow anyone to come and disturb its influence in the South China Sea, it has reduced its vulnerabilities, because of a number of decisions related to that. I'm talking of CPEC, I'm talking of, its partnership with Bangladesh, I'm talking its partnership with Sri Lanka, with the Maldives. Also, there are talks of Chinese partnership with Iran. So essentially, they have the Straits of Hormuz, which could be used by it, and the oil and gas supply of the Chinese. First of all, that even if it is interfered with, the China has alternative not only through the BRI but also China has now established direct road and rail linkages with Russia. And
Yes.
the Russian oil and gas is tremendous. And I think China could very clearly benefit for that. I think we should also never forget that while India says, that whatever is happening between India and China and Pakistan, it is a domestic affair. It is not. It is the issue of where three nuclear powers are involved, and I think the world needs to see it in that perspective. Uh, Finally, I'd like to say, that the Cold War that is going on now, I think both the United States and India would suffer more in the economic field than China, because China now has a very large number of alternatives. It can fall back on the European Union, as I said, on Russia and all the 138 countries of the Belt and Road Initiative. China and Pakistan have shown a lot of restraint and a lot of provocations has been ignored by China in particular when India has been directly attacking Chinese interests related to the CPEC in Pakistan, including attacks on the Chinese consulates in Karachi and open threats to state-sponsored terrorism. And Kalbhushan Yadav has actually confessed to that. So I think China has been very reasonable. But I think it is high time now, and it is the appropriate time that China has come up it has declared that it is not going to accept any provocations from India, and that even if it is supported, even if these provocations are under the US umbrella, China would still defeat them.
All right, Jan Saab, that's a very interesting analysis. Now, over to you, Ambassador Saab. The question now is that this agenda of the Indians to sort of creation of destabilization in the region, whether you talk about Pakistan or talk about the other neighbors and now with the Chinese, don't you think that it has to be a proper way to engage the Indians to United Nations maybe? That whatever is going on in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir?
India, India had a very good chance to take the matter to the United Nations, but India had a very weak legal and
Case.
moral ground to do that in terms of Ladakh, referring to what happened in June. So India did violation of an international law, and conflict which emerged out of that did not have any international legitimacy. So because of which India could not. Yes, the second point is China. Could China take it to the Security Council of the United Nations? Yes, and but China also knows that they only have two veto power votes, and the three are with the allies of the United States, which is the France and UK and United States. So at subsequent stages, maybe they take it to the Security Council. But at this point in time, even if they make a resolution, it may not be. It would. The chances are that it would be vetoed. Number one. Number two, the Indians, why they are doing all these things? We have discussed it a lot on it, but I'll just add few more points. India, from our perspective, is doing a role of an spoiler, whether it's SEO, what you are referring to, and its inclusion in SEO is now subsequently giving us the perception and indication that they are going to create some difficulties. At the end of this year, India, in its own turn, is going to get the chance of hosting SEO, head of state and head of government meeting. And again, the very purpose and enshrined in the articles of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, I think that would be hampered. And in that case, what I envisage and what I foresee in future, that invoking the relevant article of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, in which it says that the neighboring country, the member countries, would respect their borders and they will resolve the dispute peacefully.
And one more important comment I want from you is about the current issue. We all know that after the revocation of the Article 370 and claiming Ladakh 35 as the Union territory, now, Ambassador Saab, Uh, for example, if this situation escalates, or the Chinese they refer to the United Nations Security Council, in both the case scenarios, do you think the issue of Jammu and Kashmir and the atrocities committed by the Indian forces, that will also be highlighted? It could be a part of that whole deal, sir, because eventually if you look at the region, sir, there are three major stakeholders: China, India and Pakistan.
That's right. It depends the way the resolution is moved and the way it is supported by the Security Council members. As I said, that even if it's supported by 15 members, less those three which are the veto power members, it would become difficult to get the resolution passed. So that is one impediment, the same impediment which we are facing in terms of Kashmir, where more than about 10 resolutions are there and it's not being implemented because of those factors. Now, this here also we envisage the same factor. Chinese now they are being provoked, as we discussed it a little earlier, with some indication they are being provoked, and because of the build-up which has taken place, and the collaboration which has taken place with the United States and the regional emerging situation, India would try to grind its own eggs, number one, settle its own scores, number two, and try and take maximum advantage from the US and its allies during this time and divert that energy and try to divert that force towards Pakistan. And no one less than the Prime Minister of Pakistan and the Chief of the Army Staff has already spelled out in a very clear term that India has all planned for the flag operation. So all these indicators, once we take it in toto, we know
All right.
that United States has said it many times that they would not like the influence of China in terms of BRI or CPAC. So CPAC is about just a couple of hundred kilometers from Daulat Beg, which is the last and from the
Yeah.
last tip of the Kashmir, and 8 kilometers away from the Konjra Pass. So all these things are the vulnerability, and China understands it quite well. And as it has already been mentioned, BRI is about $4 trillion project, 135 countries, and it's such a huge interest and global interest now, and China is
All right.
spearheading it and Russia supporting it. Yeah.
All right. Ma'am, closing remarks from you.
Yeah. I think that this matter is very important, as Ambassador mentioned. A huge investment done by China, and obviously they would have arranged something to protect it, and they would not, they are not ready to face challenge from India even. And as you questioned earlier, that there may be some naval base possibility to protect Gwadar as well. So as India is provoking, as United States is behaving, there would be very much possibility of that. And China and Russia, they have created a regional hegemony. And now if United States think that their allies are with them, you see that France is taking different stance. They are speaking in favor of Kashmiris and human rights violation. They are similarly 5 of the European Union countries spoke against Israeli annexation of Gaza and West Bank, because they say that after 1967 all Israeli annexations are illegal under the UN resolutions as well. So I think that the Chinese initiative would be more in favor of strategic and security scenario of the region, and that is provoked by the United States, and that would be again detrimental for the US and Indian interest in this region. And this BRI and this CPAC, that is providing China opportunity to encircle India, and that would be paralyzed if it would be if it would continue the policy they are right now doing as a proxy state of United States.
Well, ma'am, interesting times ahead, I guess. Anyway, Dr. Saab, thank you very much for your participation. Jalsa, it was a pleasure having you, and thank you so much, Ambassador Saab, for your participation as well. And that's all we have for this hour. Inshallah, I'll see you tomorrow. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.